What's up, everyone? Welcome to this edition of the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Hope you're doing well. Now, we've had a number of broadcasters on the show before, but I am stoked because we got another one on today, and she's a good longtime friend and one of the best sports broadcasters you're going to hear on the airwaves coming out of Vancouver. Caroline Frolic is on the show today. Caroline, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. How long has it been since I've seen you? It's been well over 10 years, and that is unacceptable and not cool. Like, your kids are all up and grown and, doing taxes, aren't they? Like driving.
They've moved out and are running for office right now. So it's
perfect.
But also, you just reminded me that I'm also old now. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm old as dirt, dude. We're in this together. Boy, my back hurts.
So for those who are listening to this podcast and are not in the Vancouver area, where can they currently hear you right now?
Sportsnet 650. So www.sportsnet.ca/650. I have a show called OT with Caroline, Lindsay, and Lena. And I am also a morning sports anchor at 660 News in Calgary and at News 1130 in Vancouver. So I'm up at the time I used to go home.
So now, obviously, coming out of the pandemic, like when it all started, sports was gone. There was nothing. There was literally nothing. You could have done sports highlights on people playing caps at home because they had nothing better to do but sit home and play caps. Mm-hmm. What was, as a sports anchor, how was that moment where it's just like sports are gone? What do we talk about?
It was exactly that. Now, what do we do? But luckily, the NHL and PA were always having discussions. And a lot of it had to do with, 2 days ago, they said this. So it was a lot of recapping and a lot of, hey, news. It's going to be a 45-second sportscast instead of 2 minutes. And they were all, okay, fine, because, they had a pandemic to talk about. But it was just finding things, but it was mostly keeping people updated on when sports would be coming back, if it would be coming back, what new mandates, because at this time it was still a 3-week flu right at the beginning. It was still, just 3 weeks, it's just a flu and then we'll be fine. Well, so much for that. But it was a lot of just keeping people updated on potential. So it was a lot of if, ands, or buts, and a lot of really, 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 really waiting for it, trying to make things much longer. But the news gang were just, do what you can and it's fine because we have a pandemic and mass death to talk about. So yeah, I was very grateful to be doing sports, even though there were no sports. It was much easier to talk about than, sadness, death, and viruses. So.
Now, normally sports broadcasters are pretty much able to, have access to the athletes, be able to, conduct interviews and the like. Obviously, all of that has changed in the past year and a half. So from your perspective on Sportsnet 650, how much has it actually changed the way that you guys cover the sports and your access to the teams?
Well, I mean, everything is done through Zoom. So you have to make sure that you are muted accordingly and mic'd up accordingly. I haven't had any issues. I don't really interview them, say, post-game. We interviewed them for our show, for a segment called Canucks Unplugged, So we would get to know the players as people, as opposed to, hey, how was that goal? Was it fun scoring a goal? It must be sad to lose the game. Instead of those questions, we'd say, all right, what video game are you playing? So we would get to know them as people, and that would be done over the phone anyway, pandemic or not. So it didn't impact us in that way, but I know that it's a whole heck of a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of strange sounding audio, but this is how it goes. This is our life now.
It's funny that you mentioned that because, the long-standing joke of all hockey post-game interviews is, it's a team effort, 110%, put the pucks on the net, good things will happen, stick to the game plan, minute at a time, one shift at a time. Yeah. Obviously, that is your standard post-game interview. So when you're asking them about, what video game are you playing, more personal aspect of it, do you find that the players are more receptive when you're talking to them, not as the athlete, but as the person who just happens to play hockey?
100%. I mean, we tell them all, we have to start with hockey because that's what you do. And, with the Canucks season, it was always here's some sad talk to start off with. But then they knew what they were getting into with our show. And we just told them, have fun with it. We're just going to have a conversation. We want to know who you are, not just, piece of meat, play hockey for me. And they were all very receptive. I mean, we spoke to Nate Schmidt, who, could entertain anyone and anything. And he's no longer a Canuck, which makes me very sad, but a story for another time. But they really, really enjoyed it. And Adam Gaudette, again, no longer a Canuck. He reports indicate looked at the PR manager and said, that was the best interview I've ever done. And oh, wow. He was really happy because we weren't, why are you losing? Why didn't you take that shot? Yeah. Okay. You know what? It sucks to lose and it's fun to win. Thank you. What makes you tick? Tell us about the TikToks you do with your wife, because that's more fun. We want to make sure that people understand that these athletes are human, and 100% are, you have 8 minutes turned into, oops, we went 17 and no one complained. So they're more apt to talk to us when we're not trying to attack them. We're not trying to corner them. We're not trying to get a good clip. Well, we are trying to get a good clip, but something more fun. And I think it really resonates with them because these athletes aren't usually treated as human beings. They're commodities.
That's gonna be that's gonna be one of the tougher things, where it's like, when the team is doing well, they're happy to talk to anybody. When the team is not doing well, they want to avoid talking to everybody. Do you find that, when you are approaching them, even when they're in, say a slump, it's still easier to say, okay, we're going to talk hockey for a little bit, but then I want to learn more about you. Do you find that they take a look at those moments and say, okay, I know I have to talk to the press, but I know they're not going to focus on, bad hockey talk?
Yeah, and they were more, as we just said, they were more receptive and more happy to speak to us. It was less of a grind. And I'm sure, having to deal with media person after media person, no matter what you're talking about after a practice, it grinds on you. That is part of the job, sadly. And they know that. And we haven't had any issues of nobody wanting to speak to us or anything like that. I mean, they're all media savvy individuals, but I think it's just refreshing for them to not have to say the same thing over and over, like, 110% best fans in the league, got to put more pucks in, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's just more refreshing for them. And I think maybe, and I haven't confirmed with any of the Canucks we've spoken to, but I think possibly being treated like a human being is just rare and felt really good when talking to the media. Not that they're all like that, but I mean, it's just the same old questions, and like I said, with the Canucks last season, it was one big giant dumpster fire. So it was always sad talk. So to lighten it up and say, hey, tell us about your video game and this TikTok you did with your wife, and, oh, you're engaged. What's the wedding going to be like? Are we invited? It's a little, just takes the edge off. Mm-hmm. And as Anthony Ciccione, our old boss at the Score, said, Frolic, relax. We're not curing cancer. And I just went, okay, I get it. I mean, have your work ethic, take your job seriously, but you don't need to take yourself seriously. So, and I think that the players kind of appreciated that.
Now, you mentioned earlier the show OT with yourself, Lindsay, and Lena. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It is the first and only all-female sports talk radio panel in Vancouver, and we think possibly Canada. Not sure yet. Don't want to claim that just in case. But it is a lot of fun. And we've been getting some very positive feedback. There's always the few, I prefer men's voices. And it's like, well, then fine, then go away. And you're still listening. So, okay. But it's just 3 girls, 3 friends talking about sports. When we go for dinner and when we go for our what we call team dinners and we talk about sports, that's OT. Just 3 people shooting the poop, talking about sports, debating, having fun, talking about who has the best fashion, but also who has the hardest slap shot. So we put in a little infotainment in there, but we can also analyze with the best of them. So you just never know what you're going to get. And that's what I love about it. And I have the best co-hosts in the business. I'm so grateful.
When you think about, the concept of having to stay home and not people for the last year and a half. Because that's what a pandemic makes you do. A lot of people, of course, took to things like Zoom in order to be able to still connect, because one of the things that they were missing was those conversations. And you also saw a rise in the number of podcasts that were coming out, because in those podcasts were people being able to listen to conversations, and even though there's just a third wheel to it, they're still sort of involved in the conversation. So, two-parter here for yourself. How cathartic was that to be able to still be able to do the show through the pandemic with your friends and have those conversations? And then for your listeners to be able to hear those conversations and still feel almost as if they're a part of the show themselves, something that maybe they have missed because they couldn't go out in people.
You just nailed it. It's been cathartic, and it's been just fun. 3 buds talking about sports. The text line blows up. We get callers, and it's just, we're all in this together. And that's kind of what we try and let the listeners know, that, yeah, we want to hear from you. And please text us, please call us. We're all doing this together. We're all sad Canucks fans. We're all sad sports fans waiting for sports to come back. Well, now it's all back. But at the time when we first started, it was still kind of iffy. And it's just a bunch of friends talking about sports. And I think that resonates with people, because we're not trying to tell people how to fan. We're not gatekeeping. I think that's the name. We just, if we're all having a beer together, this is what it's going to sound like, except we might have to, clean up our language a little bit because it's radio. But that's just kind of the vibe we want, that everyone's just sitting there having a beer with us, and we're just chatting about sports. And we're like I said, we're all sad Canucks fans when we're all waiting for sports to come back to normal, and we're all waiting to get into the arenas, into the buildings, onto the field. We're all waiting to get in there. So we're all in the same boat.
I want to take you back about 10 years because it's 2021. And if we all remember in 2011, the Canucks being knocked out too soon. It's been 10 years. It's been speaking of sad Canucks fans, it's been 10 years. But when people who don't know, right? People who aren't in Vancouver and don't know the passion of the Canucks fan base, and their only instance of that may have been watching fires being lit outside of the arena at the time. How has the Canucks fan base been, through your interactions with them through this whole period?
Very, very polarizing. Either they're disgruntled and want the entire team to explode, or they're so hopeful and ready to go. There is no happy in between. It is a tale of extremes, and they're both entertaining. And they're both entertaining fan bases to speak to, albeit frustrating a little bit because they are so extreme. But 2011 was hard. I mean, I wasn't here then. I was still in Hawaii, but I hear from all of my friends, dude, what's going on in your country? I'm like, what do you mean is going on? What is going on? This is Vancouver. You're all supposed to be high and chill. What is this? What's going on? But yeah, and that's still, some American markets are like, at least we don't blow up our city. It's like, oh God, it's been 10 years. Yes. Okay. I mean, it's just frustrating because this is the same city that just hosted the Olympics the year before without a hitch. And then those idiots, I can call them that because they are, those idiots go and burn up this beautiful city. And it was just very, very disheartening. But as my American husband likes to joke, he goes, well, Montreal, they burn things up when they win. Vancouver, you guys burn things down when you lose. So, I mean, he's like, what is it with you Canadians? You guys are so nice until hockey happens. Then you people become unhinged. And I'm like, well, yeah, you do have a point there.
Well, in all fairness, Montreal also blows up things when Guns N' Roses cancels their concert early. So, we won't hold that against them. Yeah. But your journey to get to where you are now, it hasn't been a straight line. It's had some different stops along the way. So if you can kind of walk us through your broadcasting journey, going all the way back to, and I'm going to bring this up, the new VR.
Ooh, look at you, the new VR in Barrie, Ontario. What is it? CTV Barrie now or something? I don't know. It's gone through some changes.
CTV2, yes.
Oh, CTV2. Oh, they got a 2 now. Interesting. Well, I took a job at City TV in Toronto on Queen Street there. as a receptionist just to get a foot in the door, see if I liked the business, see if there was anything I could do. Long story short, a chance conversation with the assignment editor got me an audition at the new VR in Barrie. I'm hearing conflicting reports that I was hired, A, because I would work for cheap, and B, they owed him a favor. I'm not sure why, but I don't care. I got the job, and they were impressed that I could say Hideki Arabu. They're like, how can you say his name? And I said, well, because that's his name. They're like, but you said it right. Okay, no, we're not going to have this conversation. But it was a comedy of different sort of errors that got me up there. So I moved up to Barrie and was a sportscaster up there for about a year and a half. Then I left to go to WTSN. And that was short-lived because they did a mass layoff about 6 weeks in. And then I was harassing Anthony from The Score. Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Are you going to hire me? Can I come in for an audition? What's going on? What's going on? Like literally stalking the poor man. And later he goes, your persistence got you in here. I said, oh, I just had a ticket to Hawaii and I wanted to know if I could have taken it. And he's like, oh my God, Frolic, really? I'm like, well, I'm here now. You can't get rid of me yet. And so did The Score. And then I left The Score, went to Hawaii, and then did radio. Some sports radio. I did a heavy metal and punk show, which I think you would love, Jay Wiss. And my husband, met him there. He had his own show. And if you go to Maui and if you see bumper stickers that say the A Train rocks, that's him. He was the A Train. And did stuff for the San Francisco 49ers because the radio station that we were working for was a broadcast voice of the Niners. So they sent me to training camp and they knew I was the token Niners fan. So they're like, all right, go, shut up. Did some baseball there and then moved back to Vancouver, and Sportsnet 650 happened. And here we are. And now we're doing work for City TV as well, OT. Some of our interviews are filmed for TV. We just interviewed Christine Sinclair, which was kind of a big deal. We were all a little bit starstruck, but tried to hold it together. But she couldn't have been more fabulous. And that's my nutshell of a career, and it's still going.
I want to jump back to those WTSN days, and aside the fact that it was unfortunately short-lived, you are seeing now finally women's sports getting the broadcast attention that it does deserve. We're not fully there yet, but when you can think about how long ago WTSN was, in the world of massive content availability that we have right now, like there is a bandwidth for a station for anything you want. Why do we not have that channel? And not necessarily WTSN, but something like that, something that is women's sports centric programming. Why does that station not exist yet?
That is the question for the ages, my friend. The demand is there. The top selling female athletes, most promoted athletes are female. The top 3 are female. And people want to support women's sports. I do not know why it is not on more. I really don't know why. That's why I always try and lead with the Women's World Hockey Championships. A, it's hockey. B, it's in Canada. But the women deserve to be promoted. They work just as hard, and they've had to wait a long time for this tournament. So, I mean, I think it's slowly getting there. I mean, why? I wish I had an answer, and I wish someone would start. I think about that a lot. It's funny you talk about WTSN. I think about that a lot. How different it may have been had it have launched in 2021 instead of 2011. Because so much has changed in 10 years. So much has changed in 1 year. I think it would flourish now, and it just makes me so sad that it's not being revisited. Because I think it would flourish. I think, honestly, I really, truly do. Because the level of talent is out there in the WNBA. The level of talent is out there in soccer. Working on getting a league in Canada. Thank you, Christine Sinclair, for really going to bat for young women who play soccer here in Canada. I think the desire and need is there. It just needs the venue. It needs the avenue. And you're right. If WTSN was on now, I think it it would flourish. I think it would absolutely flourish. No one would get laid off after 6 weeks.
I mean, you are seeing a lot of the women's based leagues getting coverage now. The WNBA is getting lots of coverage now. CBS picking up the NWSL. You had the Dream Gap Tour that was on Sportsnet recently that was getting a lot of attention as well. The Big Ten Network is constantly showing women's sports. And it's just one of those things where it's just a matter of, if it comes up in Canada, what league should be on it. And if someone came up to you and said, we're going to start this and here's your ticket to the job, are you going to make that jump?
100%. Who wouldn't want to be a trailblazer? Who wouldn't want to support? I mean, I'm a woman. Of course, I want to support other women. Gosh, you just got me excited. If that happened and if I was told, hey, help cover this, absolutely. Where do I start? I'm starting now. When do I sign? Let's get this going. And the female athletes should be treated and paid like the male athletes. They're doing equal work. And with broadcast rights, people will be watching it more. People have to go to the games. Really, you want to support the WNBA? How many games have you been to? Exactly. So put your money where your mouth is. And if given the opportunity, absolutely, I would sing like a bird and I would do the best that I could to promote it because, hey, these women have been grinding it out. They need part-time jobs in order to play their sport. Male athletes don't have that issue. And, it's still a big split. But yeah, if given the opportunity of 100%, I would try and close that gap the best I could.
Now, one of the other things that's on your resume lately is the in-game host for the Vancouver Canadians. Mm-hmm. Now, for anyone who doesn't know who the Vancouver Canadians are, maybe explain that, but also the fact that, even though they're Vancouver, they just spent their last year playing in Hillsboro, Oregon. So, how's the experience being the in-game host for the Canadians, and how was that not having the Canadians here?
Well, it was, how I love my baseball, Jay West. So getting the opportunity to do field reporting and also hosting a show about baseball and the Vancouver Canadians, it was just, I was giddy as a schoolgirl. And never mind, everyone in the Canadians organization, just top shelf. I cannot say enough good things about everyone in the organization, from the president all the way down. And it was just a lot of fun to bring Vancouver nationally. The Vancouver Canadians are loved here. You have no idea. The Nat Bailey Stadium, 5,000 seats. It is jam-packed every night, and they are wild. Saturday night at the Nat, there is nothing like it. It's not like sometimes, sorry, I love you Blue Jays, but sometimes the crowd can just sit there and people are on their phone or people are just kind of sitting there. Maybe not so much now because they've just been back after a long time, but Vancouver loves its Canadians. And to not have them here, it's just been a big gap in the summer, because that's what you do. If you're a Vancouverite, you go to Seas games in the summer, period. And it just was so sad because they went from short season single A to long season A ball. So longer season, better talent, and all of the, future Blue Jay prospects have to stop in Vancouver first. So if this was a few years ago, we would have seen Vladdy Jr. and that would have been really cool. But it was short season then, so it's just longer season and more baseball. So it was just such a shame that we weren't able to see them. And there was a school of, train of thought that the president was on our show. The president of the Vancouver Canadians, Andy Dunn, was on our show and said, you know what, the end of September, for some reason, we have a 12-game homestand to close it out. So I want to bring the team home for the final 12 games. Logistically so flawed, but he knows how much this city loves its Canadians, and he was going to make it happen. But unfortunately, the border and the issues that he said we had to be adult about it and just say we can't do it and just come back stronger in 2022. But it's been a real gap for Vancouverites. And, even if you're not a baseball fan, people go to the Seas games. I've had people say, I don't know baseball, but I love the Canadians. Okay, cool. Just keep going to games. That's all that matters, because the kids feel it. And yeah, hopefully next year this will be a little bit better. I mean, the Whitecaps, the Lions, they have fans. Looks like the Canucks are going to have fans. Nat Bailey Stadium being an outdoor stadium, hopefully we will be able to have fans back and I can actually be on the field again. I'm just dying for it.
I find that fascinating because when you think about Toronto, you know, obviously the fans in the stands. I mean, the joke was at Leafs games like, you know, count the suits.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, like with the Canucks, of course, like the Canucks are always going to be a main attraction in Vancouver. But then you get, you know, the non-main teams. I mean, the Lions have their fan base; they always have. You know, the Whitecaps have their fan base, but these smaller teams, like the Canadians, the ones that maybe don't get the coverage that they deserve, but yet they're still beloved. Do you see that a lot in, you know, some of the smaller, maybe not as recognized teams out there?
I think so. I mean, the CEBL is getting a lot of play here, and I think people are just now craving sports because it's been taken from us. So any sport that is happening, people are now paying attention, whether it be quote unquote mainstream, the big ones, or the new up and coming leagues. People are just starved and craving for sports, for the camaraderie, because sports brings people together. I mean, gosh, it's Vancouver is craving it. I'm sure every market is, but I mean, yeah, just something about the Vancouver Canadians, man. That place is going to be crazy when they come back because, you know, even the kids, they all say we want to come back. I mean, Hillsborough, Oregon's really nice. They've been good to us, but they're not our fans. And so it's been an away game for them the entire summer. I mean, at this point, they just want to get their reps in and get, you know, the big club watching them. But it's Vancouver Canadians fans, they would take buses across the border and it would be away games, but it would be home games. And it couldn't do that this year. So it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for Vancouver baseball fans who crossed the border to watch the Jays play in Seattle. And it was just, I mean, Seattle fans are very excited because it was just a bunch of drunk Canadians running down the street going, woo! And so that was really fun for them, but it's just so sad. It's just part of summer. That's what you do. You go to Seattle and you cheer on the Jays, and the Jays love it. They're like, hey, no, it's our game. It's our team. I mean, it's our home fans right there. It's not Seattle. We have two home bases, and they didn't have that this year. So yeah, it's just sad.
Now let's pop back over to Hawaii for a bit, because you talked about being on radio there, and not just talking about sports, but getting into the music side of things. So to go from a sports broadcasting background to now all of a sudden talking about, you know, metal and hard rock on Hawaii radio, how was that shift? And you know, was that in your wheelhouse musically?
It absolutely was. I mean, I found that station and that show by accident. I was working in a restaurant at the time, and I was leaving pretty late, and I was flipping through the channel and I hear Motley Crue Live Wire, and I was like, "What? Wait, what?" And then they played Sabbath, and then they were playing all of the, you know, metal, and then they played, you know, Cookie Monster metal. I was like, what is happening here? And I got the name of the show, Aces Radio Rehab. Okay, I'm going to listen to this from now on. This is not what you hear, A, on the radio, or B, on Maui. And then I was looking through Craigslist for just jobs, apartments, you know, stuff, Craigslist searching. And he was hiring for an intern. I'm like, oh my God, this is that show. And so I applied to be an intern. And then halfway through the first show, he goes, hey, do you want to stay on? So that's how that happened. But I loved it. I loved talking about metal and hard rock. And well, it couldn't be hard rock. He refused to play Metallica because he said it was classic rock. It's not metal. So, whoa, I know. He goes, because you can go to any classic rock station and they'll be playing Metallica. We're too edgy and too cool. So great. He said we're heavy metal and punk. So he loved his, you know, Lamb of God. He loved his, you know, all of those kind of bands. I loved the punk side. So I would play Sex Pistols. I would play Dead Kennedys, Rancid, Skinny Puppy, you know, yay, Canada. And we would play some Kitty as well, because you got to, ladies, go girls. But we just had so much fun. And what was so different about sports is that sports, it's very facts oriented. You have to get the scores right. You have to get the stats right. Yes, we're not curing cancer, but you still have to have your wits about you. When it came to music, you could just have fun. And it didn't matter if your opinion wasn't shared by anybody else. It was just so much fun. And it kind of made me a better broadcaster, made me a little more confident in myself. And I ended up meeting my husband through it. So who knew?
Now, before I ask the next question, your first response to Cookie Monster Metal. As a sports broadcaster, was your first thought, when did Dikembe Mutombo do an album?
Oh my God. I love it. Oh my gosh. Now that's going to be in my head, and I'm not going to do the impression, but that is in my head right now. I love that so much. Thank you for that. I am forever enriched for linking those together.
Dikembe Mutombo sings all the metal hits on his new album, Not in My House.
No.
This now needs to happen. Dikembe Mutombo, please do this. This would be better than the Pat Boone Sings Metal Songs album. I am totally on board for Dikembe Mutombo doing some guttural metal.
And we played that too. We played the Pat Boone Does Metal too.
Oh, I have that
Play
CD.
a little bit of everything. And then actually we would go rogue sometimes. Like we were off at 11 o'clock on Saturday nights. Sometimes the host would have a little too much fun. Ace of Ace's Radio Rehab, that was the name of the show. He would play ICP. We would we'd just go crazy. People call in and go, am I hearing Insane Clown Pop? Yes, you are. And this is just the kind of night we're having. The owner didn't live on the island. The owner of the station didn't live on the island. So we kind of went rogue sometimes, but it made it fun, man. We're talking about music. It's fun.
I find it interesting though, we're not going to play Metallica because everyone plays Metallica. And, when you listen to, quote unquote rock radio, on terrestrial radio stations, you do hear a lot of the same, like here's the new songs that we're all pumping out. And then, yes, here's Enter Sandman. And basically there were certain bands where you only heard one song out of their catalog, despite albums and decades of music. Okay. Oh, they're going to play Candlebox. They're going to play Far Behind. Oh, they're going to play Queensryche. Well, they're going to play Silent Lucidity. So how refreshing was it, in rock radio and metal radio to be able to play the songs that weren't getting played on every radio station?
It was fantastic. We would load up our laptops, plug it in. We had CDs. Yes, that's right, kids. We had CDs, but we could just download any song that we wanted, make sure the language was, appropriate, or we knew where to, hit the beat button. And he did allow me to play Metallica as long as it was, Ride the Lightning, like old school stuff. So I would play Whiplash because that was my jam when I was in high school. That was the only acceptable Metallica because it wasn't mainstream, but it was so much fun. Just, hey, I remember this song from this album. I want to play it. Yeah, put on track 8, and it was just so much fun, and people loved it. We got calls in going, oh my God, I haven't heard this song in years, haven't even thought about this song in years, or what, that was Iron Maiden? Well, yes, it was. And it was refreshing, and it was fun because we had carte blanche. As long as we kept our language clean and we kept the sponsors happy, we had carte blanche, and it was so refreshing for mainstream radio,
For the music files who were listening to your show, as you were mentioning, you started to play, a couple of deep cuts, or at least, the rarer tracks, so for them being able to tune into a station where they're going to hear, not the same stuff as every other station, how was the show received by the listeners?
Well, it was very niche, being heavy metal and punk on Maui, when overwhelmingly people want to hear, reggae and, the cool, modern music as well, Jawaiian music, as they call it, that kind of ruled the airwaves. So our show was so niche. It was on a rock station, classic rock station, but our show was even more niche. And that made it even more fun for us because no one had any expectations. So we could just run with it and introduce people, even casual, metal fans or just curious people who are just happened to like me hop in the car and go, oh wow, what the heck is this? It was really fun to introduce people to new cuts, new tracks. People, the fans responded to it very well. We got calls, we got Facebook messages. People just loved it. So we knew we were doing something right, and we weren't doing it for anybody. It was more for us, for our own entertainment. But then it became, oh, well, such and such in Happy Valley wants to hear this. No, da da da, and here wants to hear this. Oh yeah, oh, they called last week. Oh yeah, they're our friends. So we would talk to them on the radio, and it just became one big community.
Now, you have done television in your career, and you've done radio. To you, which is more comfortable?
Television is more comfortable. Radio, you cannot rely on a smile and a wink if you make a mistake. Television, it's more performance-based, so there's a lot more to it. Whereas radio, you have to connect and you have to know your stuff. You have to be present. It's more difficult to connect. It's not more difficult to connect. It's, I don't know the word. Maybe, yeah, more difficult to connect on radio. You just have to be you just have to have more. You can't rely on your crutches of oopsie and a smile and a hair flip if there's a mistake made. And it's the connection you make with radio is more than television. I think television is more superficial, which makes it a little easier. Whereas radio, I hold myself to a higher standard when I do radio. Not that I don't take both seriously, but radio, it's just that much more.
Obviously, with the different stops along your career, there's a lot of perseverance, because as anyone who has worked in broadcast knows, or has even just seen the stories of ownership changes, layoffs, cutbacks, the whole works. For you to be in broadcasting as long as you have shows an incredible perseverance for the industry. So going through that, how many times did you sit there and go, oh dear God, here we go again?
Lots. It happened less than a year ago here in Vancouver with TSN 1040 being ripped off the airwaves. They were in the middle of their morning show and they were told, oh, you guys are going. What? Going where? And the whole station just went under in a second. And we just looked around going, oh my God, that could be us. And those are our contemporaries. We have the same job. Everyone's like, oh, your competition's gone, you're happy? No, that's not how it works, because we're all in the same industry. No one pulls for anyone else to fail. And if you do, you're a psychopath. But yeah, and every time there is a layoff anywhere, you just kind of go, am I next? Are we next? Who is next? And it's just so uncertain. So, I just kind of made the conscious choice to say, I might not be doing this next week, or I'll be doing this for another 10 years. It's not up to me. But what I can control is how I am when I am working, when I'm on the air. So, keep my work ethic, take my work seriously, but just know that it could be gone at any time. How I've lasted this long, I have no idea. I've gone through, some metamorphosis, gone to music, to sports, but these are all things that I'm interested in. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to do this. No, it was all fascinating, fun things that I enjoyed. But I also know that this business is fickle and it is mean. When you're in it, it's great, but it's very unforgiving. And so I don't ever take it for granted. Never do I take it for granted.
Now, for anyone who's listening to this and has an inkling or an idea or a passion to get into broadcasting, even after hearing of the perseverance that is needed to have a long lasting career, what would you say to the person who's listening to this, and wants to kind of go down that same road?
Go for it. Make sure you have not just thick skin, but skin that is made of concrete, because you will be knocked down. You will want to give up. I gave up. I wanted to give up, and I thought I retired after I left the score. Who knew? Do it. Keep a goal in mind. Don't be too above anything and don't be too below anything. Give everything a shot, and if you have an end goal in mind, don't ever give that up. You may have to change your path a little bit. You may have to zigzag back and forth. Like you may have to take some detours on the way, but never lose sight of your actual goal, whatever it is. But have a thick, concrete skin, because people will try and break you. And if you just, God, it sounds like a pageant answer. If you believe in yourself, you can do it. But you really, really, truly have to know who you are and why you are doing this, and be ready for anything. And as I said, don't be too above anything. Don't be too below anything, because you just never know who's watching, and you never know what opportunity will lead you to the next opportunity. I was a receptionist at City TV. A month later, I was a sports anchor at the new VR. And people were like, oh, you have to move away out of Toronto? Yeah, I'm moving to Barrie. It's not far, and it's a nice city. But sometimes you may have to make these sort of quote unquote sacrifices, which I didn't feel it was a sacrifice because I loved it and this is what I wanted to do. But sometimes you'll have to make uncomfortable choices, and it's not going to be easy, but it's worth it.
You're listening to the Major Mixtape podcast. Our guest today, Caroline Frolic from Sportsnet 650 out in Vancouver. We're going to step away for 2 seconds, and when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Caroline. You've heard it all before. Waste of film. Dumpster fire. How did this even get made? Train wreck. Total garbage. Snooze fest. Utterly painful. Worst film ever. But is it really? The show is called It's Not That Bad, and we dare to look at the lowest rated shows and movies and see only the good things. We're looking for A grades in B movies. It's Not That Bad. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the Major Mixtape podcast. My guest today, Caroline Frolic from Sportsnet 650 out in Vancouver. Now, earlier we were talking about your time in Hawaii. While you were in Hawaii, there was a cell phone alert that happened.
Oh, good God, that day.
The Hawaii missile alert. So from someone who was there on the ground in Hawaii when that happened, please tell the story.
Well, my favorite is all the, people in DC who called Hawaii an uppity state. And what does Hawaii know about attacks from foreign military? Okay, read a book.
Right.
Read a book, first of all. Thank you.
Or watch a Ben Affleck movie.
But I digress. But I missed it. I was up all night the night before catching up on my Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Yes, I watch very highbrow programming, JWIS. And I was supposed to wake up early to go to CrossFit the next day, and I didn't, because I was up watching, crazy women beat each other up. And that's how I spend my time. So I slept through it. And I did hear my neighbor yelling something and crying, and I was like, oh, whatever. All right, just drunk kids. And I just stayed asleep. And then I woke up and I checked my phone, and it was everyone from Toronto, I think you included, saying, are you okay? What's wrong? And I'm like, what the F? I just slept in. What's wrong? I'm going to CrossFit. Okay, I'm going to work out. And then I saw the notification and I heard it, and I'm like, oh my God. So I go running downstairs. I check on my dad, and dad's like, yeah, we were going to blow up, but now we're not. And I'm like, okay. And then my husband went to a baseball tournament, a softball tournament. And so I called him and I said, you didn't come home? You didn't want to die with me? Jerk. And he's like, I figured, by the time it hit, I wouldn't be there. And I'm like, you didn't want to call me and tell me you love me? He's like, I didn't think it was actually going to happen. But, anyway, I don't want to laugh about it, but now I can kind of make light of it because it did not happen. But there were friends of mine that were putting their kids in bathtubs. Hiding in the bathroom and saying, I brought you here, I grew up here and I brought you here and now you're going to die, kind of thing. So it was a very real thing. And everyone's like, oh, you believed it? Well, yes, we believed it. It was an emergency alert on our phone. Why wouldn't people believe it? And, hindsight is 2020. But yeah, it was a very terrifying day of people legitimately thinking that this is how we're going to die. And with the way that president at that time liked to tweet and liked to antagonize, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that he could have ticked off the wrong people. And he was at one point, but thank goodness it was just it was not real, obviously, but it was still a very terrifying 37 minutes before they were like, oopsie, our bad. But that's 37 minutes of calling your loved ones, saying goodbye. That's 37 minutes of what do I say to people? How do I want to spend my last 37 minutes on earth? I slept through it. I don't know what I would have done. I keep looking back and thinking what I would have done, but when you think that is actually what is happening, absolutely terrifying. And people were really shaken up for a long time afterwards, and rightly so, because what if there is a real one? What if? And because you just don't know. But yeah, that was like F that day. That's all I have to say. January 13th, F that day.
When you think about, the image of living in Hawaii, it's all Magnum PI scenics, and, everyone's doing a luau and everything is all hunky dory. But then when you think about the possibilities of earthquakes and tsunamis from earthquakes and, typhoons on that side of the coast, it's like, so how much of that played into day-to-day life in Hawaii?
Not so much until and unless we got a warning. We had a lot of hurricane warnings, a lot of the center is coming for Maui. This is it. But somehow it would just dissipate. I mean, and that was another fear, that when is the real one actually going to happen and no one's going to take it seriously? The big joke, one of the hurricanes got literally stuck in a volcano on the Big Island and dissipated and turned into a sort of a tropical storm, or just like a small category 1, which was tolerable for everybody. So Madame Pele 1, hurricane, blah, 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 0. So there were even Hawaii so chill, Maui so chill, even the hurricanes dissipate. So when we would get the hurricane notices, we would go into panic mode. We would make sure we had water. We would make sure that we had food. I had an electric car, so I had a generator, so we were lucky there. But you would have to take it seriously. Turns out nothing ever happened, but it wasn't a part of daily life until it had to be. Say a tsunami watch, when that horrible earthquake happened in Japan, we were on tsunami watch. But also when you looked at the mainland news, said tsunami hitting Hawaii right now, but they were using the viz from Japan. So,
oh God.
Right? So all of my friends and family on the mainland were like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm just like, yeah, I'm at my friend's house at the top of the mountain, and we're cool. That's not it, So yeah, it wasn't a part of our life until it had to be. And it was, few and far between.
Now, one of the things that happened while you were in Hawaii was that you were named Mrs. Hawaii. So yes. Tell us a little bit about that and about, your involvement in pageants.
Well, I started doing them when I was little, and please don't get the visual of toddlers and tiaras and the whole, 5-year-olds dressing like porn stars. No, that was not the ones that I did. I did one that were, very scholarship based. There was a girl in my school that was doing it, and she talked about it. And I was like, well, I want to do it too, because I saw Miss Universe and Canada won it a few years ago, and I want to do it too. And someone was like, all right, cool. And I did, a lot of dancing and a lot of baton twirling when I was little. So it was just another avenue to do that. And I just kept on doing it. Then of course I stopped in my 20s. I was like, all right, I'm done. And then I don't know, I was like, let's just do Mrs. Hawaii. I want to get into shape. I want a reason to get into shape. And I want to, promote causes that are close to me. And I want to do something really cool, because people say I can't do it. So if you're going to tell me I can't do it, if you're telling me I am from an outer island, if you're telling me I'm too old and I can't do it, well, I'm going to show you. And I did. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. The women I competed with at Mrs. America, we are still in touch with each other to this day. We're still in the same Facebook chat from 2015, and just some of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. And I did things that I never thought I could. So, yeah.
And you also spend a little bit of time, kind of working with some of the pageants to kind of help things along, help the organization, and help the contestants as well.
Yeah, I used to run the Miss Maui USA, Miss Maui Teen USA pageant, which would go to Miss Hawaii, Miss Hawaii Teen, which would go to Miss USA, Miss Universe, Miss Teen USA. And I also worked with the Miss Universe organization, lived in New York City for a time, and my roommates were Miss USA and Miss Universe. So how's that? But and again, incredible young women, and I love the business side of pageantry, and I know what it can do for women. And you think it's, you have to have the biggest this and the highest hair and all of the things and be cute in a swimsuit. The physical is a part of it, but you really, really have to be an intelligent, driven young woman to be attracted to pageantry. You have to have everything firing on all cylinders, physically, mentally, spiritually, your community involvement, everything. It just I find that pageants held me to a higher standard. Everything had to be, on the up and up. It held me to a higher standard. And some of the women I've met in pageantry are the most driven, incredible, intelligent women I've ever met.
For the contestants that you were helping when you were working with the pageant, how much did it help them and you, the fact that you were in their shoes and being on stage and competing as well, obviously not in that exact pageant, but have that competition background in order to be able to help them with their competition?
I think it was everything, because they would say, okay, when you did this, how did it feel? And when you were here, and what if a judge asked this? And what if this? So I could just share my experience. And, coming from Maui, quote unquote, outer island, not the main island, it's seen as you're a disadvantage. Oh, they will never crown an outer island girl. So I would go up to them and go, hi, remind me again how they're not crowning an outer island girl. What makes me so special? Nothing. I just worked hard. You can work hard too. And so it would just be, oh, okay, representation matters. Again, if you see it and if you know it's possible, then you know what you can achieve. Like, there's nothing stopping you. There's no mental block. There's no self-sabotage. But I think having been in their shoes, they trusted me a little more because they know that I would get it. They know that I know what it's like to walk into a room of 5 strangers that are ready to judge you and grill you with questions. They know what it's like to be on a stage being judged. And, I could sympathize and empathize, and also give them, tips of what to do and what not to do. I could be a cautionary tale as well.
And you mentioned too, the camaraderie that comes not just, from working with it, but, being a contestant with them kind of thing. So what is it that builds that camaraderie among the contestants that carries on year after year?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think it's just a certain personality type is drawn to pageantry. People that are, overachievers, want to do good things, but also have a really cool experience, do something out of the norm. How many times have we dressed up in the last year? Okay. But just little things like that. And you kind of are, in a strange way, rooting for each other, if that makes any sense at all. And people are like, oh, bull crap, you just want to win. Yeah, of course, you don't enter wanting to lose. You don't enter wanting to not win. But you just know that everyone has also worked incredibly hard to get there. And, we're all kind of in this together. We're all doing really cool things in our communities. And, why not support that? I mean, God, women shouldn't tear each other down, build each other up. And I find that's what happens with pageants, is when women build each other up. And that's why I'm so drawn to it.
I want to draw a parallel, and I want you to tell me how close the parallel actually is from someone who has been, has held as many roles as you have. So at the end of the pageant, the winner is announced and all the contestants gather around to congratulate her. Mm-hmm. Even though they've lost, they still go and congratulate them. The end of a hockey playoff series, no matter how tough that 7-game series was, there's still that handshake line. There's still the hugs. There's still, the defeated team congratulating the team that's moving on, or in some cases actually won the cup. How closely paralleled are those two?
Yes, I see what you're saying. And, watching Carey Price not win a cup, but have to go in that line and congratulate. I'm not comparing myself to Carey Price or any other contestant to, a legend, but it is hard because you work so hard to get there. In pageantry, you just kind of have to go, well, different set of judges, could have been a different outcome. Maybe I looked like one of the judges' exes, or maybe I just stumbled in an interview, or maybe my personality didn't resonate with them. Maybe they just saw something in somebody else. Whereas in hockey or in sports, you have direct control over whether or not you score. You have direct control whether or not you defend. You have direct control. Whereas in pageantry, it's sort of, you can only do what you can do. And if it resonates with the judges, it resonates with the judges. So it's more subjective in pageantry. So it's a little easier to take, I would think, as opposed to, I didn't do enough or we didn't do enough. So I think it's a little different there. But yeah, it is kind of, you just kind of go, oh, I really wanted this. But you know what? So did they. You got to do it. You have to win and lose with dignity. And that's what I always say, when people don't want to shake each other's hands after a game, I'm like, oh, shut the F up. You have to win and lose with dignity. And I think that's a good lesson for pageantry. When younger girls enter, you can't be a cocky jerk winner and you can't be a sore loser, because, your time will come. And if it doesn't, there's something else.
That also brings me up to something I found while I was putting my research together. Be you. Can you tell us a little bit about Be You? Yeah,
it's a foundation I started. It took a bit of a hiatus during the pandemic, but it started in Hawaii, and I just wanted to talk to younger girls about building their self-esteem. A lot of girls didn't have anyone to look up to talk to, and you kind of go down a different path sometimes. So I wanted to just be somewhere for them. And Be You comes from, a bumblebee can't fly because science says it can't fly. No, look, aerodynamically, a bumblebee can't fly. Oh, but wait, you see bumblebees fly every day. So if someone tells you can't do something, just go ahead and find a way to do it. So I wanted young girls to just have a venue to be able to feel like they can accomplish what they want to in life. A lot of these young girls came from socioeconomic backgrounds where, college might not have been an option. So I tried to build up a scholarship program for them so they can at least have some partial funding to do some higher education, to get a little further in life. And it's also evolved to be a mentorship program as well, because again, I've said it before, representation matters. When I was growing up, I didn't think I could be a sportscaster until I saw, Andrea Kramer, and I saw Doris Burke, and I was, wait a second, look, they're girls and they're talking about sports. Maybe I can too. So I match up young girls who want to do XYZ with their life. I find a woman in a high up position to let them know that, hey, this is what you have to do. And yeah, you can, because I can. So if you see it, then you can actually believe it. Representation matters. So that's what Be You means to me. And it kind of has taken on a different form, but it all centers around empowering young girls.
You mentioned earlier that television broadcasting was very much performance based. And of course, there's a little bit of that in radio as well. And of course, being in pageants, there's a performance aspect to that. So where does that or drive to perform come from? What was it that made young Caroline want to be a performer?
That's a very good question. Maybe being an only child and just having mom and dad at my disposal for all of my performances. So I was like, look at me. I'm so good because I have no competition here. It's just me. I have no idea. I just am an outgoing personality and just want to experience all different kinds of interesting things, performing, not performing. I think I'm just a outgoing ham, and that's where that comes from. And I'm never at a loss for words. My words might not make sense, but I'm never at a loss for them.
What was it that drove that early inspiration? Like, as far as, okay, I'm gonna just put myself out there, and just be. Like, what inspires you? What drives you to be able to keep going?
People that I love believing in me. And I told my dad the other day, Auntie Carol, his sister, I said, is the reason why I'm doing all of this. And he was like, really? So we're watching the Miss Universe pageant. And I was like 4 years old. And I said, oh, they're so pretty. I want to do that. And she goes, then do it. I went, oh, what? She goes, then when you grow up, then why don't you try and do it then? If you want to do it, then do it. No one's going to do it for you. And I just kind of stopped me in my tracks of, okay, because no one ever told me I could do anything before. No one ever told me I couldn't, but I mean, I'm 4. And those are impactful words when you're 4. Then do it. No one's going to do it for you. Then do it. And then a little later, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to be on TV. I want to talk about sports. Then do it. I'm like, okay, then I will. And I did. So it's just having somebody that I loved so much say that they believed in me. I think that's kind of where it all stemmed from, was my Auntie Carol just saying, well, then do it. If you want to do it, then do it. Why can't you do it? This guy's doing it and he sucks. You don't suck. Go do it. So just having someone believe in you, and then really pumping your tires, and then, having the wherewithal to actually follow through.
And I do have to ask, because you mentioned that, the metal and hard rock radio station in Hawaii was very much your musical wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. What was young Caroline listening to make that your wheelhouse?
I was listening to Duran Duran, and I was planning my wedding to Simon Le Bon, but the big jerk didn't wait for me to A, grow up, and B, for us to meet. So yeah, I had a very 80s, Boy George, Duran Duran, Menudo, even though I couldn't like Menudo because they were competing with Duran Duran, so I had to choose. So I chose Simon Le Bon. I couldn't like Menudo, even though I did like Ricky Martin. I just listened to all of the, hip stuff from the 80s. And then all of a sudden Pyromania came along, and that just kind of threw me for a loop of, oh my God, I love this. And so me and my little neighborhood best friend, we would put on roller skating shows in my driveway to Rock of Ages. And if there is a tape out there with that, I will die a little bit inside, but also might broadcast it.
I was going to say, if anyone does have that tape, please feel free to send it to Major Mixtape.
I'm sure it's somewhere. I'm sure my dad has it somewhere on a VHS tape somewhere. But I just loved all music. I grew up in a musical family. My dad was a guest soloist for the Toronto Symphony Orchestra when he was 14 years old, playing violin. So I always grew up with classical music. And then my older half sister would play ZZ Top for me, or Conway Twitty, so I was always just exposed to all these random, different, incredible musical tastes. And, I discovered Duran Duran on my own, and being a good 10-year-old girl, that was my obsession for many, many years.
I do have to ask, because I do like to find out, what was the first album that you bought with your own money from the record store?
Probably a Duran Duran tape. No word of a lie. Probably, Seven and the Ragged Tiger, Rio, one of those. I don't exactly remember, which is so sad because I was so obsessed with him for so long. But probably one of my Duran Duran tapes. And those got really, really worn. And then I would also sit by the radio and have a blank tape in there and wait for the song that I love to come on. Then you have to push play and record on the boom box to make sure it recorded. And so you'd always hear a little bit of the DJ, which was fine, but they always stopped right when the music started, or right when the lyrics started. So they were so good at that. And I would always practice and try and do that. Never got it right. But yeah, so I just made my own mixtapes, so to speak. So that's why I love your podcast so much. So I'm like, oh my God, I totally did that when I was little.
You do realize it's time to put you on the spot now. It is time. Okay. So if you, Caroline Frolic, had to introduce yourself to a total stranger, but instead of saying, hi, I'm Caroline, you hand them a mixtape, and on that tape are songs that tell the story of you. What songs are on that tape, and why are those songs there?
Okay, well, first, what's my name? I have to put in a little Neil in there. Ba, ba, ba. Ask anybody with my name and they're going to say Sweet Caroline, because not only is it one of the top 3 drunk person songs of all time, even though I'm not cool anymore and it hurts to partake in that now, us Carolines go off when this song comes on. Because growing up, when you're getting your personalized things like, a Jason keychain or a pencil with your name on it. Well, no, we had Carol or Carolyn. Caroline's got no love back in the day. We had no respect. So Neil made us feel welcome as a people. But fun fact though, when I was super little, like 3, 4 years old, when my parents would put that on, I hated the song. Psychotic temper tantrum to the point where my mom thought, is she going to hurt herself? I don't know why. I would have a temper tantrum that would move the earth, but now it's all, turn it up and sing to me. And yeah, so of course I have to put in Sweet Caroline because I have to put Duran Duran in there because I told you about, my love for Simon Le Bon and my horrible realization that we were never going to get married because he was a grown up, and B, we were never going to meet. And also when I moved from Hawaii back to Canada, it was pretty traumatic. It was pretty big culture shock. I had no friends. I was picked on. But Duran Duran came with me, and they were my only friends. They were comforting. It was something that I had from home in Hawaii that was just constant and there and made me happy. Now, as a grown-up, I realized that pretty much all the songs were about sex, and they were all really, really naughty. And of course, the Girls on Film video traumatized me at a very young age. And although Reflex is the song and video that got me into the band, I'm going to choose The Chauffeur because that song is badass. Can I say that word?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What else? There's also a song or a band that changes your very being, like shakes you to your core. You know who you were with, where you were, what you were wearing, what you were eating, all of the things when you heard it. So that for me is Black Dog by Led Zeppelin. I was on a school field trip on the bus. Someone started playing it, and I felt like I was hit by lightning. I needed to know and learn everything about this band. I made sure I got a hold of all their songs, but it all started with Black Dog. Near that first bit, and you just go, oh, I couldn't breathe. I was like, what is this? This is incredible. And also, if you want to play Thank You, go ahead with your bad self, Jay Wiss, because I walked down the aisle to Thank You by Led Zeppelin.
Nice.
Yeah. Another one, maybe not as earth-shaking, hearing the License to Ill album while sitting in the back of my best friend's sister's convertible, No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Any good mixtape has to have some beasties in it, or you are doing life wrong, and the terrorists have won. So I lived in Hawaii over half my life. I need to include some people from my home. One, Bretta is Israel Kamaka Viva Ole, Over the Rainbow. And I know it's, some people may roll their eyes at that, but the story behind that song, it was done in one take. He was working, I think, as a janitor at a recording studio. He asked nicely if he could just have a moment on the mic when everyone left. And the studio manager was just so impressed by this gentle giant and how polite he was that he was like, yeah, sure. And out came that rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, one take, and it's now iconic, and it just takes me home. Another favorite taking me home, like as much as I love Vancouver, being back in Canada, Hawaii will always be home, is Shaped Who I Am. And when I went back this last time to live, I left broken. And then I just ended up finding myself again, being there, and just getting myself back is everything. And this song that always hits me, it's by an artist named John Cruz, and it's called Island Style. So look that one up. And then we're going to change gears a little bit. And your hat is inspiring me, Jay Wiss. Anthrax and Public Enemy, Bring the Noise, baby. That song gets me riled up like you wouldn't believe. When the Canucks were in the playoff bubble, remember that? And I was too nervous to watch the series against the Vegas Golden Knights. I used to just crank that in my earphones and then just run around and kind of do a little mosh pit to get all of my energy out. But that song, if I'm in a bad mood, put it on. Or if I'm sleepy, put that song on. There we go. What else? Oh, taking it back even further. Our Lips Are Sealed by the Go-Go's.
Oh, wow.
The Go-Go's, badass girl band from when I was a little nugget. Now, I didn't know girls could be cool musicians until then, and others from the same era, Pat Benatar, Joan Jett, those, rockin' women. Now, my friends and I used to be the Go-Go's. We would set up the boom box, of course, and blare their music and lip sync in front of the mirror. And it was like Rock Band before Rock Band and Guitar Hero, and I was always Belinda Carlisle, so got to put in some Go-Go's there. Speaking of badass women, Cher. I used to hang out in gay bars because I was obsessed with drag queens, and I still am. And a favorite of said queens, if I could turn back time. Although you can pretty much play anything from Cher, like close your eyes and point. It's Cher, for F's sake. Show some respect. More badass women, Lady Gaga. If it happens to you, that Oscar performance, I lose my breath and cannot function. I do a lot of work with survivors of domestic violence and rape survivors. This song is everything. Where else? 9 Inch Nails. Now, this is hard to find one because Trent Reznor does Tortured very well. Something I Could Never Have, Hurt, so on. I could just choose any song from any album. That's another artist that you just kind of close your eyes and point, and there's a great song there. So I'm gonna have to go with Wish just because. And any Frolic playlist will have 9 Inch Nails in there, period. And in high school, I was a rocker chick. So I had the big hair, the fringe leather jacket, that whole thing. So my generation is solely responsible for destroying the ozone layer. And we started global warming with all the aerosol hairspray. Sorry, environment, but you know I'm right. Anyway, I used to be a redhead, and my inspiration for becoming a redhead, Tawny Katane in the Whitesnake videos. I just thought she was the coolest chick ever. And I was like, oh my God, when I grow up, I want to look like her. She's so pretty. And oh my God, she got the lead singer of the band. So let's put a little Whitesnake in there. Let's do a little Here I Go Again, because still a banger. So many hair metal bands, so little time. But as a Gen Xer, listening to older people now cry about how Gen X can save cancel culture, and shut up. So now, people are being held accountable for their douchebaggery, and they're saying, well, Gen X will save us. No, screw you. Remember the PMRC? Remember when you wanted to mess with our metal and rap albums? Remember that? Shut it, Tipper Gore. I still get giddy thinking of Dee Snider from Twisted Sister going into Congress, looking like Dee Snider, and then owning the old sad white people trying to protect us from music. Dee Snider for president, even now. We're not going to take it. I want to rock, all of the things, because it's just good old fashioned bangers. You don't have to think, you just enjoy it. And back to our radio show on Maui, Aces Radio Rehab. Got to put some Dead Kennedys in there. When I was living in New York City, they actually played in Philly. So my buddy and I hopped a bus and went and saw them at this club. Afterwards, we had a few hours to kill before the giant bus took us back to the city. So we chilled in a restaurant next to the venue. Who walks in but the band? My buddy just yelled, "Hey, dude, it's a good show." And we didn't hang with him or anything, like we're not BFFs, and they weren't up to anything. They were just dudes getting a meal after a show, because, we're all old now. But I was breathing the same air as the Dead Kennedys, so I got that going for me. Another quirk with our metal show, we would randomly drop in a Johnny Cash song in and amongst all the metal, Cookie Monster, Sex Pistols, whatever punk metal thing we had going on, just one Johnny Cash song. And then we wouldn't speak of it. Like when we were doing the recap of the song, it's like, oh, so you just heard Lamb of God, blah, blah, blah. Before that was Iron Maiden. Before that, da-da-da. When we would do that, we wouldn't even mention Johnny Cash. People would be like, did we just hear Johnny Cash? Like, I don't know. Did you? I don't know. And so it was the brainchild of Ace, the host of the show. Like I mentioned how I was obsessed with Johnny Cash, and he's like, he's the original metalhead. He wore all black. He was badass, and he didn't give a bleep. Like Johnny effing Cash is the original. So we popped in a Johnny Cash song with no explanation, because Johnny Cash needs no explanation. And as I was prepping for this, I listened to Live at Folsom Prison, and my whole world just changed again. I've got lots.
Oh, we got time.
Okay. So speaking of Maui radio, where I met my husband, we didn't want anyone to know we were dating at first. So he was kind of like a manager. He was kind of pretty high up there at the station. And he was pretty well known on Maui, and our last relationships were both dumpster fires. So we wanted to just keep it to ourselves. So on his radio show, he would play the hip for me, his Canadian girlfriend. He also called me the goalie, and I called him Howard, which is his middle name. So no one could figure out who we were talking about when we were in public. But why goalie? I asked him. He said it's a hockey thing. Again, Canadian. It sounded better than defenseman because, okay, that's the only other option. But anyway, he played roller hockey on Maui. And the goalie for his team was all, dude, are you sending songs out to me? And he's like, no, dude, no, it's my new girlfriend. Just, I call her the goalie. Because he'd be like, here's a song I picked for you, beautiful. And then this is for the goalie. So his buddy, the goalie, would be like, oh, do we need to have a talk here? Now we all get a good laugh out of it. But yeah, so he played all kinds of different hip songs for me. He called in reinforcements from other Canadian expats on the island, and hilarity ensues. Queen, because it's Queen. When Freddie Mercury passed, I was in high school. Again, that was another time where you knew where you were, what you were doing when you heard the news. A bunch of us just left school that day, just listened to Queen. And we were like, wow, Freddie Mercury was gay? He had AIDS? What? Because we had so much to learn. Bohemian Rhapsody, because that's why. And speaking of Queen and Bowie, likely my favorite song of all time, Under Pressure. That song gives me chills every single time. And it's an old song, as we know. Every time I hear it, it feels like the first time I'm hearing it, and it impacts me the same every single time. So Under Pressure. And I think that's it.
You mentioned before about how niche Ace's Radio Rehab was. Mm-hmm. But when you think about the plethora of Sirius XM stations that are out there and how absolutely niche some of those stations are, it's like for people who like bands where three members of the band are still the same, but two, or however niche you want to get. Do you ever wonder if there will be a day where a show like Ace's Radio Rehab could make the jump to Sirius? And if so, and they called you up and said, hey, do you want to mix in random Johnny Cash and Dikembe Mutombo songs together again?
Oh my gosh, bring it. Let's do it. And I think Sirius is the way to go with that. I think that it would absolutely flourish because I think people have so many different tastes now. And I think that was part of the beauty of our show. I mean, we were a niche on a small island, and we were, successful with our, small little crew. But I think our show is just so niche, random, fun that I think it could fly now. And I know Ace, he'd be ready to go. Bring it.
Before we go, and having listened to your career and life journey, if you had the chance to go back and talk to, leather jacket with the tassels and whatnot, to talk to that young Caroline, to let her know how life is going to be in 2021, what would you say to her?
I would tell leather jacket young Caroline that life is going to throw you for a loop. You are going to lose yourself at times, but you will always find your way back. And people will try and break you and you will get broken, but just keep on going, because this too shall pass and you will end up being a strong, pretty badass grown up.
And cut back on the aerosol. And
wear your sunscreen. And don't ever drink Jaeger, because why? No.
We don't talk healthy Jaeger on this show. Jaeger is good. Okay.
Or maybe I would tell that long-haired rocker chick, maybe don't do the extra shot.
Okay, I'm going to give you the secret recipe here to make Jaeger tolerable.
I don't, by not drinking it?
No. Mix it with Fresca.
Oh God.
You say that now.
My liver has just exploded.
You say that now, but for people who don't like Jaeger and don't like Fresca, mix the two together.
Okay.
You're like, oh dear God, no, that's not going to happen.
Oh God, I'm rocking. I'm in the fetal position right now, rocking at the thought. I'm not young anymore, man. I can't recover. I have a mimosa and I'm like asleep for the rest of the afternoon, dude. I'm not cool anymore. I used to be.
No, but that's okay. Caroline, thank you so much for this. Where can we find you on social media, and where can we hear you on the radio?
Social media, it's Frolic on Instagram, Caroline Frolic on Twitter, and on the radio, Sportsnet 650. So www.sportsnet.ca/650, and also Radio Player Canada app, News 1130 Radio.
Caroline, thank you so much for this. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to this edition of the Made You a Mixtape podcast. Now, if you're listening to us on an audio streaming service, you can watch this entire interview over on YouTube. However, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, you can actually download us on the go and listen to us wherever you are on any of your podcatcher services, whether it be Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, wherever you get your podcasts, download, listen to, and enjoy the show. My name is Jason. This is the Made You a Mixtape podcast. We'll catch you next time. Take care.